Let's consider the reality that love is not revealed through grand declarations, but in how someone arranges their life. If a person says, "I love you," but fails to prioritize you when it matters, those words carry very little weight. Human beings are meaning-making creatures. We don't just hear language, we observe behavior. And behavior, especially over time, becomes the true language of love. When someone loves you, they reorganize their world in subtle but consistent ways. It's not always dramatic. It might be as simple as adjusting their schedule to spend more time with you, remembering the little things you said weeks ago, or ensuring you're emotionally safe in their presence. These aren't surface-level gestures. They are quiet signals that you matter. Love, in its most sincere form, is revealed not in what someone says when it's easy, but in what they do when it's inconvenient. That's where people often misunderstand love. We've been conditioned to associate love with intensity, big speeches, bold moves, romantic declarations. But mature love, the kind that endures, doesn't need to announce itself at every turn. It demonstrates itself in how it shows up under pressure, when things are uncertain, when emotions run high, when responsibilities pull us in a dozen directions. Who still carves out time? Who still checks in? That's your answer. And this is precisely why many people miss the signs of real love. They're looking for words instead of presence. But you cannot fake presence. You cannot manufacture genuine concern or consistent effort. You can say anything. But to show up repeatedly, to prioritize another person's well-being without being asked, that's a form of truth that doesn't require explanation. It's also where love becomes a choice rather than just a feeling. Feelings are fleeting. Prioritizing someone, even when it means sacrificing comfort or convenience, requires intention. And that intention is built on something deeper than emotion. It's built on values, commitment, and respect. If you want to know whether someone truly loves you, don't ask them. Watch them. Observe where they place you in the hierarchy of their time, their energy, their sacrifices. So the next time you wonder whether someone loves you, stop searching for the perfect words. Instead, look at the structure of their life. Do you appear in it consistently, meaningfully, and without condition? If you do, that's love speaking its loudest. Because in the end, love doesn't say you're important. It acts like you are. And that, more than any three words, is what you can trust. There's something profound about the way a person listens when they're in love. Not just the act of hearing words, but listening, truly engaging, absorbing, and responding with care. You'll notice it in their stillness, in their attention, in the way they remember the details you forgot you even mentioned. That kind of listening is not casual. It's an act of presence. And presence, in our distracted, fast-moving world, is one of the rarest and clearest indicators of deep emotional investment. Love, when real, creates a kind of reverence for the other person's inner world. It's as though their experiences, their fears, their joys all become part of your mental landscape. And so when they speak, you're not just waiting to reply or to offer advice. You're taking them in. You're valuing their perspective as something that actually matters. That doesn't happen unless there's love behind it, because deep listening requires effort, discipline, and above all, respect. Now think about this psychologically. Why is attentive listening such a powerful sign of love? Because to truly listen, we have to set aside our ego. We have to relinquish the desire to dominate the conversation, to be right, to impress. Listening says, you matter more in this moment than my own agenda. It's a silent declaration of humility and care. In a way, it's one of the most selfless things we can do. And make no mistake, this kind of listening is felt. You feel safe around it. You feel seen. You feel like your emotions are not just acknowledged, but held with a kind of sacredness. That's why people who feel truly loved often say things like, I can just be myself around them, or they understand me without me having to explain everything. It's not magic. It's not fate. It's someone choosing moment after moment to listen. So when you're trying to decipher whether someone is truly in love with, you ask yourself, do they hear me? Not just when it's convenient, but when I'm struggling, when I'm vulnerable, when I'm unclear even to myself. Do they offer their attention when it costs them something? Because love isn't proven in grand romantic gestures. It's revealed in those quiet moments when someone chooses to be there fully without distraction or impatience. In a world full of noise, love whispers through attention. And if someone listens to you like you're the only voice in the room, they don't need to say, I love you. They've already proven it. One of the most overlooked indicators of love, real, durable, committed love, is sacrifice. And I don't mean grand movie scene gestures. I mean the daily, often invisible choices someone makes to prioritize you, to alleviate your burden, or simply to be there, even when it's inconvenient. That's the key. The presence of love is often felt in the willingness to endure discomfort for the sake of someone else's well-being. There's a profound psychological principle at work here. Sacrifice is evidence of value. We do not give up time, comfort, or resources for things we don't care about. When someone consistently chooses you over ease or self-interest, they are revealing something that words could never articulate fully. It's a non-verbal affirmation. You matter more than my momentary comfort. That's love in action. Now consider what this looks like in a relationship. Maybe they drive an hour out of their way to see you after a long day. Maybe they cancel plans because you're struggling and need support. Maybe they carry emotional weight, calm you down, reassure you without making you feel like a burden. They don't complain. They don't make a scene. They just show up. That kind of reliability doesn't come from obligation. It comes from emotional commitment. In a culture that idolizes self-fulfillment and individualism, sacrifice often gets a bad reputation. But psychologically speaking, mutual sacrifice is what binds people together. It's how relationships earn their strength. Love without sacrifice is sentimentalism. It's a theory with no practice. But when someone sacrifices for you without needing recognition or reward, they are demonstrating a kind of love that is active, mature, and enduring. And this doesn't mean abandoning one's own needs or being a martyr. That's not love either. Real sacrifice is reciprocal. It's part of a dance where both people choose and over again to give something of themselves, not because they have to, but because they want to, because their partner's happiness has become part of their own. So if you're unsure whether someone truly loves you, look at what they're willing to give up, not because you ask them to, but because they choose to, the energy they spend, the small comforts they surrender, the ways they adjust their life, even in subtle ways, to make room for you. Because in the end, the deepest form of love isn't spoken, it's proven in sacrifice, in service, and in the silent choices that say, you are worth this. Let that be your compass, not their words, but their willingness to give. Another unmistakable yet profoundly subtle sign of deep love is attentiveness, not just listening, but truly noticing. And that's a far rarer quality than we like to admit. In a world flooded with distraction, the ability to observe someone closely, to remember the small things they say, to intuit their mood shifts without explanation, that's not ordinary behavior. That's someone whose mind is anchored in you. At the psychological level, attentiveness reflects emotional investment. When we care deeply, our attention narrows, we tune in, we become sensitive to patterns, preferences, needs. We notice when someone's voice changes slightly on the phone. We remember that they like their coffee a particular way, or that they avoid certain topics when they're anxious. These aren't just acts of observation, they are acts of intimacy, because the more you notice about someone, the more you enter their world, piece by piece. And here's what's important. Attentiveness has nothing to do with grandiosity. It's not roses and candlelit dinners. It's the way someone adjusts the car seat back to your preference, even when they forget to mention it. It's texting you a reminder about something you care about. It's catching the tone in your voice that signals you're off, even when you're saying, I'm fine. These things are small, but love doesn't live in the big things. It lives in the consistency of the small. Now, philosophically, this level of noticing speaks to something deeper the desire to know the other person, to study them almost like a craft. This is what the philosopher Martin Buber would call the I-thou relationship, a dynamic in which the other is not treated as an object, but as a subject of reverence. When someone sees you this way, they don't reduce you to a label or stereotype. They engage with you as a whole, complex, evolving human being. That is love without. T pretense, love without possession. It's rooted in presence. And presence is the essence of love, isn't it? It's saying, I'm here with you in this moment. I see you. I'm paying attention, not because I have to, but because I want to. That kind of attention is healing. It creates a secure emotional environment, one where vulnerability is safe and authenticity is welcomed. So, if you ever question how someone feels about you, don't just listen to what they say. Watch what they notice. Because real love doesn't need constant declarations. It just quietly watches, learns, and shows up better. Again and again, love listens, but more than that, it sees. There's a behavior we often overlook because it doesn't scream romance, yet it speaks volumes when it comes to real love, making space, emotionally, mentally, and sometimes even physically for another person. And I don't mean stepping aside in a literal sense. I'm talking about the profound act of allowing someone else to exist fully alongside you with their own feelings, flaws, needs, and growth path. This kind of love doesn't control. It permits. It doesn't demand. It welcomes. And that's not passive. It's deeply intentional. At its core, making space is about respecting autonomy without losing connection. It's the willingness to support someone even when it's inconvenient or when their truth challenges yours. This is where love becomes truly tested, because it's easy to be loving when someone agrees with us, moves at our pace, reflects back our desires. But what happens when they diverge? When they need something different, when they outgrow a version of themselves we've become comfortable with? That's when love either expands or shrinks. And the people who truly love you will expand. They'll ask, not accuse. They'll pause, not push. They'll seek to understand before reacting, because they aren't trying to mold you into a shape that fits them. They're trying to grow alongside you in real time. Psychologically, this points to what Carl Rogers called unconditional positive regard. The foundation for all healing relationships. It's the belief that a person is valuable and worthy of love, not when they behave well or meet expectations, but simply because they exist. And in the context of love, that means letting the other person breathe. It's standing by them when they're processing trauma. It's showing patience during conflict. It's offering silence when that's what they need, instead of filling the air with your own discomfort. Philosophically, his is love that respects boundaries, not as barriers, but as bridges. It understands that the integrity of two people must be preserved for the relationship to remain meaningful. It doesn't smother. It doesn't collapse into codependency. It walks beside, not on top of, the other person's soul. And in a world obsessed with performance, with proving love through flashy gestures, this kind of quiet presence, this willingness to allow the other to be, is nothing short of revolutionary. So if someone makes space for your voice, your needs, your process, they may not say, I love you, but trust me, they're already showing it. Because real love doesn't cling. It stands close, even when it lets go. One of the most profound yet often unnoticed ways people express love is through sacrifice without the need for recognition. It's when someone chooses inconvenience, discomfort, or delay, not because it's demanded of them, but because your well-being matters more than their momentary comfort. That is not weakness. That is strength, a form of moral responsibility woven into the very fabric of love that is rarely celebrated because it tends to happen quietly, even invisibly. Think of it like this. When someone wakes up early to drive you to the airport after 3 hours of sleep, or they listen without interrupting even though they're burning to speak, or they shoulder more than their fair share in a crisis, not because they're trying to be a hero, but because they don't want you to carry it all alone. They might not call it sacrifice, but that's exactly what it is. A voluntary foregoing of self-interest in the service of someone else's flourishing. And that's no small thing. That is a moral act. Psychologically, this speaks to a deep sense of secure attachment. People who sacrifice from a place of love, not fear or control, often operate from a foundation of emotional security. They aren't offering their time, energy, or presence as a transaction. They're not keeping score. They give because to them, your peace is their peace. Your win is a shared win, and your burdens, while not entirely theirs to carry, are not yours to bear alone either. Philosophically, this aligns with the virtue ethics proposed by thinkers like Aristotle, who suggested that love, when rightly ordered, calls us toward the highest version of ourselves. It pulls us toward the good, not just for us, but for the other. The sacrifices made in love are not obligations, they are honors. To serve another's well-being in a meaningful way, voluntarily, freely, is a kind of sacred responsibility. And the person who does this with consistency, without ever asking for praise, is engaged in something that transcends romance. It's devotion in action. But here's the crucial distinction. Love that sacrifices isn't self-erasure. It's not martyrdom. It's a conscious choice to say, I see you, you matter, and I am willing to carry a bit more today, not because I must, but because I can. So when you see someone repeatedly acting in your interest when it costs them something, time, energy, ego, that's not just kindness, that's love, real, unspoken, undeniable love. And in a world where declarations are cheap but sacrifice is rare, let that kind of love speak louder than words ever could.